You want to be in the video? You gotta get a little closer then. Get a little closer. Okay, alright. Hey guys, welcome back to Sky Talks Books. My name is Sky, and this is my April wrap-up. I haven't done a wrap-up before, this is my first one, so bear with me. April was a bit of a weird month for me. I turned 32, and then I got COVID. So, you know, I didn't read while I had COVID, because I was quite sick. And I feared I would never read again because I'm very dramatic. But I did read again. We're gonna start from my least favorite books to my most favorite, because you gotta save the best for last. My least favorite book, without a doubt, was Paradise by, Fernanda Melchin. And I read this because it was longlisted for the Booker International prize, you know? And I hated it. I read it, 1-star read for me. Okay, well, I'll start with like the good things about the book. It was very fast-paced. You didn't get a chance to take a breath. And so that was quite impressive. That was obviously a very intentional choice from the author. It was very like bow, 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 bow. It was very gritty, not in the way that I like my books to be gritty. Let's just say that. I've seen it being hailed as like the Mexican Catcher in the Rye. That's doing a huge disservice to the Catcher in the Rye. I just hated it. Also, major trigger warnings for rape, sexual violence, derogatory speech in every sense of the word. I just hated it, really hated it. If it hadn't have been so short, I wouldn't have finished it. Next we have The Friend by Sigrid Nunez. This wasn't bad at all. I had different expectations going into it. It's about a woman who loses her best friend, her like lifelong best friend, as in he dies. And he entrusts her with his rescue dog, this big old, speaking of dogs, wow, Willow. And for a book with a dog on the cover, I would say there wasn't nearly enough dog content. And that's not just me being a crazy dog lady. Like, I would say this book was 20% dog content. And there wasn't even that much friendship content. It's written kind of in like diary entries, kind of vignettes, and they were both the narrator and the friend who's dead. And that's not a spoiler, like, he's dead. They're both writers and also creative writing teachers in university. There were some amazing reflections and observations about teaching, about academia, about writing, about reading, and I really enjoyed all of those. There wasn't much of a plot. I feel like, and there wasn't enough dog content, I'm sorry. I loved the dog content. I just wanted more of it. Yeah, it was just an okay book. It was, like a 2-3 star book. Next, we have Hex. And I wanted to love this book so much because it sounded like so right up my alley. It's about this girl, like in her, I suppose woman actually, in her mid-20s, mid to late 20s, I'm not sure. And she is studying botany, and she has this real intense obsession with poison, especially. And she is clinically obsessed with her professor, who happens to be a female. And you know, like, right, doesn't that just sound perfect? So I was very excited to read this book, but it really, it fell flat for me. The writing was so disjointed, and I don't know what the author was doing. I feel like just some of the descriptions were so nonsensical, I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was like she was there writing with, like, you know, one of those spinning wheels, and she would just like spin it and a random noun or descriptive word would come up and she'd be like, yeah, his voice was like whiskey dripping from a sock in the midnight, you know? It was just like, I didn't like it. I wanted it to be kind of dark academia, and technically it is, you know, but it didn't have the vibes. Like, the plot was dark academia, certainly, but the vibes were not there. Next, I read a horror book, We Need to Do Something, by Max Booth. Max Booth III, I think? Yep. Max Booth III, what a name. I'm not super familiar with the horror genre, so you have to bear that in mind. I did really like this book. It was super entertaining, super gripping. I need to find a different word other than super. I need that author's spinning wheel. It's about this family who they get trapped in their bathroom, kind of not a very big bathroom. This is a medium-sized bathroom, small to medium-sized, because in a storm, a tree falls through their house and they're trapped. And yeah, you can imagine things go bad. One thing that bugged me, and this is completely my fault here, I was imagining 2 bathtubs the whole time. And there wasn't 2 bathtubs, but once I got it in my head that like the mom and the son was in one bathtub and the daughter and the dad was in the other bathtub, it was like couches in my mind. And I just couldn't shake that, but that's on me. Yeah, it was pretty gory. Things definitely get very dark. But it was a horror book. What else do you expect? Nice and short, page turner, did exactly what it said on the tin. Next we have Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, and I don't know why I decided to read this book first without reading any of his poetry, but that's just me. That's just how I decide to do things, apparently. I really liked it. Yeah, I mean, I was constantly copying and pasting quotes from this book. I will read one to you. Works of art are infinitely solitary, and nothing is less likely to reach them than criticism. Only love can grasp them and hold them and do them justice. Beautiful. Yeah, so it's basically Rilke writing to this young poet and just giving him advice on creativity, on writing, and on life. And it's very wholesome and beautiful because they have this sort of long friendship, and I think they meet up a few times, but mostly their relationship is friendship. Oh well, friendships or relationships is through letters, and yeah, I would highly recommend, but like probably read his poetry first. I don't know why I didn't do that. Next, I will read his poetry. Next, I read. Well, no, this isn't in chronological order. I don't really know what order I'm doing it in now. The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. And if you don't know Gillian Flynn, she wrote Gone Girl, she wrote Sharp Objects, Dark Places. I haven't read any of those, but I watched the series Sharp Objects and I absolutely loved that. It was amazing. And and I watched Gone Girl. So I wanted to pick up one of her shorter, this is a short story. It was very dark, very unpredictable, and yeah, it definitely made me want to read her longer books. Okay, now we're getting into the books that I really enjoyed, okay, the 4 to 5 star books. Johnny Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo. So this is a pretty old book, kind of a classic, 1939 it was written. It's a classic anti-war novel, and it's about this man, young guy, who he suffers grave injuries in the war to the point where he has no arms, no legs, no ears, no eyes, and no mouth. So, and the book basically goes back and forth between his current reality, just like laying in this hospital bed completely closed off from the outside world, unable to communicate, and he's just left with his thoughts, and then the other parts of the book are going back, talking about his childhood, his adolescence, and those bits I actually weren't as interested in. I mean, I was so fascinated and gripped by his, present day self, and how, I mean, there was like pages of how he worked out how to measure time moving. I don't want to spoil that part for you, but like it's so, wow. No, it was a really impactful book. Very depressing, obviously. Another 4-star read, Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. This is a book that's been on my TBR for like ages. I finally got around to reading it. It did not disappoint. It's very short. You could definitely read it in like an afternoon. Ghost Wall, it's about this girl, and she's like 16, 17, and her dad is obsessed with living like they did in the Iron Age. And so he makes her and her mother go along with this these university students and the professor on this like summer-long kind of experiment where they live as if they are living in the Iron Age. Yeah, I mean, that's the premise. I don't really want to say much more than that because it is quite a short book, and if I say much more than that, I will be giving major spoilers. Another horror. I read Gone to See the Riverman. This was recommended to me on TikTok, actually. A lot of TikTok videos about like disturbing horror books, and I was like, cool, let's give it a go. It was disturbing, but not the type of disturbing that I expected. Definitely check the trigger warnings on this one. I don't want to say the trigger warnings, that's the thing, because it's like a major spoiler. This woman is obsessed with serial killers, and she writes to them in prison, and she's particularly obsessed with this one serial killer, and they actually form a sort of a, you know, a romantic relationship through letters, obviously, and she also goes to visit him. And he sends her on a little errand, a little side quest to get this key and bring it to the Riverman. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Another 4-star read, Mrs. Caliban. This is kind of like a cult classic, a very unheard of cult classic. I haven't heard many people talk about it at all. Basically, I'm really cool, is what I'm trying to say. It's about this housewife, and she's kind of trapped in a bit of a stifling, loveless marriage after the loss of their child. And one day, this like frogman comes into the house, into the kitchen. Like, what do I mean by frogman? He is a man, but also a frog. Like, yeah, he's a frogman. Basically, he's this creature, half man, half frog, that has escaped from this experimental research center. And they form a friendship and ultimately a relationship. And yeah, it was really, really good. I can definitely see why it's a cult classic. I was interested in it because my favorite book of all time, I want to say, is The Pisces. And that is about a merman and a woman. So, and the cover kind of was definitely giving me the Pisces vibes. And I'd actually really like to know if it was at all inspired by it. Wow, a physical book, can you believe it? Mrs. Dalloway. Yes, I got this for my birthday from my bestie, and she is a huge Virginia Woolf stan, shall we say. And she's been at me for a long time to read Virginia Woolf, and she got me this, and also, this is turning into a book haul now, but she also got me Orlando. And you know, I wasn't going to start with this because it's not a small book. So I started with Mrs. Dalloway, and yeah, I see the hype for sure. It was also recommended a lot in like spring videos, like what to read during spring. But yeah, it takes place over just one day. It switches, it's omnipotent, and it switches between characters and their stream of consciousness and their observations and their past. And, you know, there's unrequited love, repressed sapphic desire, there's trauma, I would say, yeah, there's PTSD. There's a lot. Like I say, there's a lot. It is one of the most moving, revolutionary artworks of the 20th century. That kind of sums it up. Another physical book. I read a short story from this book of short stories by F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Diamond as Big as the Ritz and Other Stories. I read The Jelly Bean because it's called The Jelly Bean, because I am on a quest to read all of his works. So we've got 2 down so far. Now, onto the 5 stars. Okay, we've got some classics, we've got some millennial fiction. Starting with the millennial fiction, I read Exciting Times. And this, again, has been on my TBR for so long, and I'm so happy I finally read it. It was amazing. So honest. Like, it was just like unyielding in these, just like, in its honesty. I was like, wow. Like, she put into words thoughts and feelings that I haven't even whispered to the frogs at night. What? So it's about this girl from Dublin. I said it like that because I'm Irish. So, and she moves to Hong Kong to teach English, and there she meets a British lad. And they kind of form definitely not a relationship, but kind of a situationship, and she basically ends up living in his really swanky, amazing apartment for free. And then a little bit down the road, she meets a girl, a Hong Kong native local, and they form a relationship, not a situationship, an actual relationship. And yeah, so good. It's one of those books that it's the perfect mix of plot, of character study, of vibes. There was a very overarching theme of class and class anxiety. It's been compared to Sally Rooney's Normal People, which I haven't read. I've seen the show twice. For some reason, I'm just not reading the book. It's just one of those things I'm just not doing. So it did make me think a lot about class, and it actually spurred some pretty interesting conversations with family members and friends about class. So that was pretty cool. I want to talk about 2 classics that I read that blew me away. 5 stars. And made me so excited about reading classics. And I feel like these 2 aren't talked about a lot. And the first is The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Wow. Like, I was expecting this book to be either scary or funny. You know, the premise, a guy wakes up one morning as a giant bug, beetle thing. You know, you think, okay, that's gonna be scary, he's gonna go out and he's gonna scare everybody, or it's gonna be funny, he's gonna go out and he's gonna like try and go to the cinema and maybe meet another bug, you know? But it was neither of those things. It was truly heart-wrenching. There was so much symbolism. I mean, the whole thing is an allegory. And it was just beautiful. It was so... I don't know, I'm just stunned. I just loved it so much. And something I really love, which I find so interesting, is that he never actually described the main character as a bug. He never used the word insect, beetle, anything like that. He just described how he looked and felt and sounded. And I just think that's so interesting because, yeah, like we all say, it's like, oh yeah, he woke up as a bug. But he never actually used the word insect. The next classic that I read, The Pearl by John Steinbeck. This is again another just allegory about capitalism, consumerism, community, about good and evil. There's so much to dig into, but it's just also just such a gripping story and a masterfully well-crafted story, just like from the very first page to the very last. It was just like amazing, and the descriptions, like at one point he was describing drinking water in a desert, and I felt the water in my throat. Last but certainly not least is Bunny, another book that I've been meaning to read for so long, and I'm so happy that I finally got around to it. This is such a weird book, such a unique book, such a magical book, such a truly an experience. I'm just going to say what other people describe it as because it does a perfect job. It's The Craft meets Mean Girls. I think that's meets The Heathers. I think that is the perfect way to describe this book. Also, what I love about this book is there's a lot of different interpretations. It's one of those books where, yeah, you're going to need to go on Reddit afterwards. And in the end, you're just going to have to kind of pick whatever interpretation you like best, or which one fits for you. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about that aspect of it without giving major spoilers, but yeah, definitely a 5-star read. That's it. That was my April wrap-up. A real mixed bag, wouldn't you say? So yeah, if you made it this far, thank you so much. I love you. Willow, would you like to say anything? Would you like to say anything? Oh, shake. Okay.